Welcome in to an Inside Carolina Live postgame. I'm Tommy Ashley. We're sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. 340 people waiting at the door to get in here, Rob, to talk about this. I told Sherelle before I did this I was going to quote Sherelle. So I asked Sherelle after postgame Pittsburgh, tell me why Carolina can't make it some sort of a game or whatever. And Sherelle talked about the matchup, the size difference and all. And he said, quote, I don't even understand how UNC is going to score, to be honest. I feel for the UNC coach who has the Duke scout. How do you figure out a way to score with the way North Carolina likes to play? It's going to be difficult. We could end the show right now, Rob. I thought the first 2 minutes of the game really summed it up completely. Duke gets an easy layup off a roll, and Carolina gets one, but then Carolina just goes into their one-on-one basketball against a Duke team with massive size, playing switch defense, playing switch defense, and Carolina struggles all night to get baskets, especially in the first half. We can talk about the second half and how they scored and made it look somewhat reasonable, but this game was a rout from the beginning, an embarrassment from the beginning for Carolina basketball. Rob, your overall thoughts before we dig in?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo the point, I don't put much stock in that second half. I don't buy it. You know, I was glad to see them do better just from a confidence point of view for a next game, but it doesn't mean that they were competitive. The fact that they did better in the second half, the game was over in the first 5 minutes. Duke obviously got weakened out and sort of let them get away with a lot more stuff than the Heels were able to get anything going in the first half. You're right. I think that it was always going to be difficult for Carolina to score against them. It's difficult for everyone to score against them. They're a great defensive team. I was more disappointed with what the Heels were doing on the defensive end because I thought at least they might bring a lot of energy and try to hang in the game that way. Because Duke is not an overwhelmingly good offensive team, but Carolina made them look like one. And they, as you said, they got carved up, and they got carved up repeatedly, and that just put the game out of reach very early.
Duke scored 1.4 points per possession. Carolina 1.1 if you keep up with those kind of stats. But that's the we can talk about preparing, and somebody in the chat asked me about preparation and all that. We saw Carolina play some zone tonight that we haven't seen. But Rob, when you look at at this point in the season, you know what you've got.
Mm-hmm.
You know what works. You know what does not work. You've played against teams with size. You've played against teams that can play some defense. And it felt like to me, and you're the better basketball mind than me, but it felt like to me, it was the same old Carolina game we've seen multiple times. But then you're against a team that is elite. And look, Duke basketball is elite. Cooper Flagg is legit. I mean, and he's hard to dislike if you're a Carolina person because he's so good at what he does. But this Duke team just played their normal game, and Carolina played just their normal game. And it just can't be that way when the disparity, Rob, is such a big deal going in. And that's the problem I have with the whole deal tonight.
Yeah, I thought we knew there was a disparity in the talent levels. Everyone knew that. It's been obvious all year. But I think the disparity was alarming to me. You know, yes, there's volatility. I mean, Carolina swept them last year. There's going to be volatility from year to year, especially now with the portal. Even so, the team should never be that far apart. I mean, Carolina should never be that far behind them where they can't even be competitive for 5 or 10 minutes. Even at Duke and even with them playing well, just physically they were completely overmatched. And they have a lot of work to do to catch up to them because we know that Duke will be good again next year. Even though they're going to lose some guys, they're bringing in another elite recruiting class. How does Carolina close the gap? Because that just cannot keep happening.
To me, though, and this is my point when I talk to people, I tweeted out the 8-20 season. Carolina lost to Duke by a million twice. Covered both those games way back in the day. The talent differential then was like the Grand Canyon. Clearly the talent differential is large now. But Carolina has talent on that basketball team. They've got multiple McDonald's All-Americans. They've got multiple high-level recruits. And, Rob, they don't play like it. And then there's no concerted effort, at least it doesn't appear to see, to put them in position to have a chance in a game like this. I mean, Duke has played some garbage teams, and they haven't beaten them that bad. Your take on the talent, the actual talent difference here, it's just not as it is not as pronounced as what we saw on the court in the first half, and that falls back to the coaching. John Shire has done a great job at acquiring talent, however you want to do it. Hubert Davis has got some talent. They don't play like it. They don't do anything to express that talent. Now, the size differential you can't really do much about, but you can concoct some sort of game plan that doesn't involve trying to go inside with a 6-footer against a 7'2" guy repeatedly. Your thoughts there on the talent issue?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a difference in buy-in also. So it's not purely talent. I mean, the aspect that I found alarming is that just how could there be that much separation? And it is true, and you're right, that Ian Jackson and Drake Powell come in with very similar accolades to Duke's guys, other than Flag. Flag is a totally different case. I wouldn't expect anyone to be at his level, and they're not. But it is very surprising that the Duke guys appear so much more bought in, and some of that is just a function of winning and losing. But Carolina's guys all season have not looked completely bought in to what they are trying to do on offense. As we've talked about this, Tommy, repeatedly, that at least to me, a lot of the structural stuff looks okay, but they don't run it well, they don't screen well, they don't move with purpose, and I think that is a symptom of a team that doesn't necessarily believe that what they're doing is going to work. And then when you, on the other side, you watch what Duke were doing, and they were moving with purpose. They're spreading out the floor. You know, they're getting exactly what they want, and they know they're going to get what they want. And Carolina is not typically a horrible defensive team. This was a horrible size matchup, but Duke carved them right on up because they knew their stuff was going to work, and there was no sense of self-belief that I saw from the Carolina side, and the game got away, as a result.
Yeah, it's a great point about belief. I mean, you can accomplish a ton if you believe in it. Carolina doesn't play that way. Carolina loses 87-70 to Duke in a game that Carolina actually outscored them in the second half, 45-40, throwaway minutes. And we're not going to sit here and I don't want to really see people say that. Well, if they'd just played that way the whole game, it would have been a much different thing. Rob, let's talk about some individual performances. I mean, Elliot Cadeau, I loved how he scrapped on the floor for that rebound when he's laying on his butt and he gets a rebound. I do not understand how we continue to throw passes that work in high school level, even high-level high school, just simply do not. But one play in particular I want to ask you about. The backdoor cut from Seth Trimble that Flag intercepted, and they lead to a run out. That works for Cooper Flag because he doesn't respect Seth Trimble shooting the three on the corner. But your play, let's go through play by play or player by player and talk about Elliot Cadeau here. I thought he had some moments. He hit a couple shots. He was 3 for 10. He was 2 for 2 from threes. That's a good thing to carry forward for North Carolina. But your play overall, your thoughts on his play overall?
Yeah, he had just a disastrous first 5 minutes, and that was a big reason. Those early turnovers, I think the Heels were up maybe 2-0, and then all of a sudden they're down 7-2, and then next thing you know they're down 10 points, and they never got back in the game. And certainly I'm not pinning it all on him. But Cadeau had a real rough start, and he had the ball in his hands. And when that guy is the one making the mistakes, the results are catastrophic because there were some live ball turnovers you noted, and they could not afford the margin for error in this game was so small anyway. Certainly he is not by any means the only culprit. We could go down the line. In general, I thought some stats might look okay. I thought the big guys actually worked pretty hard, within their limitations, but the guard play was really disappointing, I thought, across the board.
Yeah, when you look at the guard play, I mean, obviously Carolina starts 4 of them. You got 3 for 10 from Cadeau, 4 for 11 from RJ, 4 for 8 from Trimble, 2 for 6. One person that stood out, and I'd be remiss if we don't talk about him. I thought Drake Powell looked good in minutes late. Now, granted, we talked about the second half, so throwaway second half, but I thought Powell, look, he was one guy that looked like he was ready to play when he was given the opportunity. Only 22 minutes, had 12 points, 3 turnovers, but he's some of those you can live with. But anyway, your thoughts on Drake Powell, because I thought this was a game for him that he showed that he could play on the biggest stage. And I don't believe at Duke it doesn't get much bigger than that.
It's funny because I thought that he looked like he had some stage fright his first couple of
Early.
stints.
Mhm.
But you're right, in the second half when he got that extended run, the thing that I liked, and I've been harping on this all year, is I like to see him get more touches, not in the corner. I've been on this all year, like get these guys out of the corner. Trimble and Powell are not corner players, and I'd much rather see them. Trimble does get some touches from the wings, but I like Powell going downhill with the dribble. I know he's not a great ball handler, but he's got some size, and they don't have many guys who are finishers with height and length, because you got Davis and Trimble and Cadeau in there. They can't finish over anyone. Powell actually can. I think he scored over Flag at one point on a pretty tough shot. Irrespective of the meaninglessness of the points, it was a good looking play, and I hope that they continue to build off that. I think if this team is going to do anything positive, which is certainly not a given at this point, I think he has to be a bigger part of the offense.
Yeah, I agree. And let's talk about that, the future after this. But let me talk about Johnny T-shirt, johnnytshirt.com. Look, you can go get some baseball swag at Johnny T-shirt because the baseball team's going to be strong. Scott Forbes has them rolling over there, and Johnny T-shirt's got all you need. East Franklin Street or online, it's johnnytshirt.com. Also, email Matt at congruityhr.com for your small to mid-sized business assessment. Those guys over there are wonderful at helping. They built their own business, so they can certainly help you build yours. Matt at congruityhr.com for that assessment. Rob, let's talk about the future. Carolina's got a week off to think about this one. They play Pitt again. Obviously lost to Pitt in a game that I felt like they should have won. We've talked about a lot of that. Should have won, could have won, and all that. But this game has now happened. We all wondered what would happen when they played at Duke. We've seen it. It was not pretty. It highlighted every issue with Carolina basketball that we've seen this season. But going forward, what does it look like for you if you're the head coach of North Carolina this week? What does it look like? Because Hubert Davis has his work cut out. And I'm not sold that Hubert Davis can figure that work out. Not 100%. But the season carries on with Pitt coming in next weekend.
That's right, and we're tracking toward talking in a few weeks about how this team was an extraordinary underachiever for the second time in 3 years, and that all goes to Hubert Davis. You can't GM your way around that either. I mean, even if they had a center tonight, they were not going to be competitive. Would have been better, but it's not just a personnel problem. I think they're at an inflection point now, not only for this season, but going into the offseason, assuming Hubert wants to come back and they want to bring him back. I think they're at an inflection point where they have to do something really different, because what they've done all year hasn't worked. And you're past the point in the season where you can worry about hurting someone's feelings, whether it's a fifth-year senior or a one-and-done freshman, presumably. I mean, do weird stuff like the go zone. Try Drake Powell handling the ball at the top of the key. You have nothing to lose, and the chart that they are on is not one that's going to success, because even if they manage to beat Pitt at home, which they have a pretty good chance to do, are they going to win at Clemson? Are they going to beat Duke at home? And that's the situation they're in now if they want to have a chance for an at-large bid, which is looking increasingly unlikely. But I think they have to think of it. It has to work the same way that the Dawson Garcia, Brady Manick swap happened in 2022, where initially Manick replaced him in the lineup, and it was a 25-15 minute split, and then of course Garcia left and Manick started playing 35 minutes. But something like that needs to happen, not just a tweak here or there or doing a little bit of a rotation in the starting lineup. I mean, big stuff, because what Hubert can't afford to do, in my opinion, is to just throw his hands up and stomp around and be surprised that the team isn't playing well. And I know what he says publicly is he doesn't like to come down on the team, and that's fine. But you at least have to acknowledge reality, not only with your words, I think, but with the actions. And there's no justification for continuing to do what they've been doing, because not only is the team not very good, but in my view, at least, it is wildly underachieving, and at least go down trying something really different.
Yeah, I mean, we all remember 2002 that I referenced earlier that Carolina got beat badly in both regular season games. Even Matt Doherty tried something in the ACC tournament, which was bizarre, but they went, quite straight stall ball, full corners ball, and kept that game within 12 points back then. I agree with you. I think Hubert's got to do something different. I mean, you cannot keep rolling the ball out with the same plan, even if it's a couple tweaks and pivots, and expect it to be different. I mean, you have to, at this point, when there's nothing left to lose, you have to do something drastically different. I'll be interested to see how it changes this week with Pitt coming in, because
With a
Pitt's the
week
team
off.
that with a week
With a whole
off.
week off.
And those are the tells, right? So, and we talked about this earlier in the season. You have a week off, and then you play a game after a week, and it looks the exact same. That can't happen for this team, whether they make the tournament or not. At this point, I think making the tournament is a borderline miracle. Especially without winning the ACC tournament. We saw NC State do it, so I guess anything is possible in this lifetime. But we've got, to your point, they've got to be something different. Now, my question to you is, and shout out to the almost 1,000 people in this chat, what is that difference? Is it a lineup change? I thought this team looked better at times when one of RJ and Cadeau was not playing, when you have just one of those. At this point, where do you find this solution, or is there a solution if you're from the outside looking in?
There may not be. I just want him to show us something, because one of my frustrations in 2023 was they didn't make the types of changes that I wanted them to make, or just to try something different, profoundly different. One of the things they could do is to switch defenses. Like, they played some zone tonight, do some more zone, try a big lineup. Don't play RJ 38 minutes a game anymore. I don't think that he's played well enough to play, and I'm not blaming him for the season. He's actually shooting it better. But I don't think that he needs to play 38 minutes a game like he has at times this year. 2025 is not 2024. Try splitting those guys up, splitting up Davis and Cadeau, put the ball in Powell's hands more. I mean, there are any number of things they could do that may not work, but I would love to see them try it, because, as you said there, at this point, they don't have much to lose. They're on a path to not make the tournament. So it at least shows some imagination on both ends of the court to give us something to talk about going into the offseason, instead of, hey, 2023 and 2025 were carbon copies. And they can't do that again. Like, just go against your better nature if that's what it takes. But just give us something that we can talk about, the little different wrinkle.
Yeah,
Or not just a little different, I mean a lot different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they talk about the general manager, and if you're on Inside Carolina Premium message boards, you've seen the discussions about general manager. That's to be seen. How that will affect anything. Let me ask you a final question, Rob, before we get out of here. Who's winning the Super Bowl?
Oh no. I can't go against the Chiefs because of their excellence equity, and I thought they beat the second best team already, Bills. So I'll go with Chiefs.
All right, Chiefs. I was going to say, just don't say the Eagles. Looking through the comments, I was trying to see if there were any questions before we get out of here. I don't see a lot of questions. I do see a lot of comments, and this has been fire. Shout out to the over 1,000 people that are in the chat. Joey Powell, Sean Moran, Sherelle McMillan will have a special show tomorrow night on Coast to Coast. Make sure you check that out, I believe, live at 8 o'clock. And then we'll have plenty more for Inside Carolina. Stay tuned to Inside Carolina's coverage from Adam Smith, Jeremiah, and Jim Hawkins from Cameron Indoor. I'm sure the press conferences are wrapping up. Anything left, Rob? Anything positive to share for the North Carolina fan base? Because it looks pretty bleak. When they were down 32 points against Duke, I was searching to see the biggest defeat in the rivalry's history. I've yet to find it. I know they lost by 29 or so back in 2002. But anything positive to carry forward in the
The
most
only I think we
positive
touched
way?
on. I think the only positive I can muster we already discussed, which is Drake Powell possibly doing more as a playmaker. But again, we don't know how that will translate in a serious competition, which those closing minutes were not. But maybe if you were looking for something like, okay, he could turn the corner and like some freshmen do, he gets it going in February. It's about the only thing I can come up with. But otherwise, we're trying to polish
A
an
turd.
unpleasant
I'll
thing.
say it. Shout out to the chat who's piped in. I remember the Corey Magetta game. He slapped the top of the backboard. I think got a technical. I think Carolina lost by 30 on that. But yeah, a lot of disappointing defeats in this rivalry. Not many top what we saw, at least in the first half and for most of the second half tonight in Cameron Indoor Stadium. Carolina falls by 17 after being down by 30 plus to the Duke Blue Devils. It's going to be a long week for North Carolina basketball ahead of Pittsburgh. Stay tuned to Inside Carolina. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity, and shout out to Rob Harrington for plowing through this one. Appreciate it as always, Rob.
Thanks, Tommy.